This episode of Paratopia is dedicated to Brian Jack, a major Maryland musician that we lost earlier this week. May you rest in peace.
Was that extraterrestrial?
Jeff Ritzman.
Jeremy Vaeni.
Oh, wait a minute. That's what we're supposed to do for the after chat.
Right.
That's almost like a spoiler for anyone who's not a subscriber.
Yes?
I don't know. It's not anything like that.
Right.
Hey, we have another listener episode this week.
Yes, we do.
Or at least I do. You're nowhere to be found.
That's right. That's correct. Yes. Thanks for pointing that out early.
Yes. MandoSteve or MandoSteve, depending on if you want to call the whole thing off, from the message boards, although he just likes to go by Steve in real life because that's his name. He is our guest, and if anyone has read one of his accounts on the message board, it is about driving into a fog bank for 2 hours and going in a circle, and it is fascinating. We had a fascinating dissection of that experience. And some other family-related experiences, which we will get to anon. But first, Jeff, do we reveal anything of the sort of, I don't know, dive into new territory that we're going to be making soon? Or do we not know enough about it to actually say more than this tantalizing bit?
I say we don't know enough, but, feel free to promo. Or preview.
Well, I'll just say
preview
this.
What you ask?
Yeah.
We have no idea.
We have no idea.
We have no idea what we're doing here. We have no idea what I'm saying here. I'm here talking to you. I have no idea.
Are you done communionizing?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll give the rough sketch, which is every now and again, Jeff and I are prone to want to quit.
Right.
Usually Jeff in the past more so than me, but
Yes.
Lately it's been on equal terms. And the very day that Jeff was going to email me and say, Jer, the show is yours, do what you want, I'm out of here. At least for the summer. Like, we've been toying with the idea of at least leaving for the summer because we don't have anything left to say, and we aren't thrilled with the potential guests that we could have. Let's just put it that way. Because we want to learn things, We're just like you folks. We want to learn things. We don't want to just skate by and just do shows to do shows. Something's got to wow us. There's got to be a sense of mystery. Or something in our lives has to be so spectacular that we must share it. And for the last, I don't know, few months or so, really nothing that spectacular. But then, on the very day that Jeff was going to write me this, once again, as happens, the gods dropped mana upon us in the form of Teokas and Ghost Horse, who left me a series of emails and voice messages saying he has to talk to me and he doesn't know why. Which is already the mystery's on, right?
Yeah.
And I call him back and I say, what do you mean? I'm thinking he thought I left him a message saying he has to contact me and he didn't know why. But no, what he meant was he's got this intuition, this strong intuition to talk to me, and he doesn't know why, just that he has to. And so maybe in the course of our conversation, we'll figure out why. Well, at least partly I think we figured out why. And I don't know all of what to say here, except that it looks like we're going to either be doing a mini-series or perhaps once or twice a month, maybe, we'll have a special episode that involves, well, Indian elders, kahunas, a whole host of native peoples. I mean, do you say native anymore? I mean, people.
Yeah.
But why now, and why this extensive, and why us, and all of that? I have my suspicions, but they are just those, and we will find out more tomorrow. So I'd rather not state them in case I'm wrong, and I don't want to build it up to be anything bigger in certain areas than it is. But I think overall, I mean, just the sound of it sounds historic. I mean, imagine having a roundtable discussion with, tribal elders and kahunas from Hawaii. I mean, has that ever been even done before? And I get a sense that whatever we'll do will involve a really deep history lesson. So at least on that level, I think we got something great.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that, and I don't want to say more because I don't know if I can, or what I should, or all of that. So there you go.
Or if it'll even be accurate. I mean, we really just don't know.
Yeah.
But it's it's making me turn my head, so that's good.
Yeah, it's as tantalizing for us.
Like, what? Okay, yeah, let's go. I mean, yeah, absolutely, let's go. And so now it's wait and see what's up.
Yeah, when Indian elders come to you and say, "Let's turn the show over to us," you tend to say, "Oh, all right."
Okay.
You came along at the right time because we were leaving. So
right. Yeah, exactly.
In any event, so we'll see how all that shakes out, and we may even have our first episode in that vein next week.
Yeah.
Because that was the way we left it with Tiokasin, that we would talk to him, that we would do a show tomorrow. We would tape a show, but the more I talk to Jeff, the more I'm not sure if it will actually be a show or if it should just be a private conversation about what the heck is going to happen. But
yeah,
either way, I'll tape it. So
yeah.
Either way, it'll be a show. So there you go. In any event, we will come back at you after this interview. Jeff will be here for the after chat, and we'll catch up with Ritzman, and we'll do the interview right after this.
If you record audio for any purpose, chances are you want it to be heard. You want to attract the largest audience possible who can hear your message. That's where we come in. We're CyberEars.com, a revolutionary internet service that will host your audio files and help you promote and track its popularity. Considering hosting a podcast to the world? We have all the automated tools to make the process as simple and easy as it can be. No technical mumbo-jumbo to work out. CyberEars.com does all the work for you. You record it, we take care of the rest. So don't delay. Go to CyberEars.com today and register for a free trial account. Upload your audio files and get heard. With CyberEars.com, it's your audio on your terms.
Paratopia, without further ado, please welcome to the program. You know him as MandoSteve on the message boards. Here you just know him as Steve because he's incognito. So let's just put quotes around that. Steve. Hi, Steve. Thanks for doing the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Now, we've had some pretty awesome listener episodes, so no pressure.
Yeah, I'll try to knock it out of the park.
Yeah, please. Well, the reason we wanted to have you on the show is because I don't know how many experiences you've had. Maybe it's just a one-off. I'm not even certain. But the one that you've put on the message board involves mist, which I'm always fascinated by, and it's something that we haven't really covered in depth here. So I guess why don't we just, before we get into that, I'll just ask you, is it a one-off, or do you have a lifetime of experiences?
I do have a number of experiences, and it kind of runs in my family. Both my mother and my aunt have been, I mean, you hate to say the word haunted because it has a lot of sort of ridiculous connotations now, but they've been sort of personally haunted. My aunt more so than my mother, but they've both had, a pretty good variety of paranormal experiences. I have had myself one or two prior to this event happening where, something that stood out to me as this is not normal, but nothing that I would consider quite as expansive as this. as the one that I had in the message board.
Right. Well, your mother and your aunt, did they talk to you about their experiences when you were growing up, or did it happen
No,
later in life?
this has been later in my life. This was, I come from a pretty sort of reserved Southern family, and this is nothing that they would have spoke about. As I got older, this is the sort of stuff they shared with me. But um, my aunt, she lives in Alaska now, and she started to call home. I guess it was maybe 5 years ago, and just discussed with me that her house, very casually at first, that she suspected that her house was haunted. And, this went on for a long period of time. She actually, although she is a sort of a dyed-in-the-wool Protestant, she wound up having a Catholic priest come to their home, try to bless it. That didn't work. When they moved, whatever this was, followed them. And it's, your typical poltergeisty type things. Rattling in the middle of the night, odd sounds, bumps, and your black mass type thing, which is familiar to anybody, I guess. And my mom is very similar in that my dad he worked out of town for a short period of time, and while he was out of town, she started to have similar experiences. And I don't doubt their claims at all. They're just not people who would even say it unless it was true, because they would feel the shame of such a thing. So,
Right. Huh. Well, I'm not certain what black mass is. What does that mean?
a black mass, like a black shadow.
Oh, okay.
My
I was
aunt
thinking like a satanic ritual or something.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know what she's really into, but I assume she's telling the truth about the rest of it, right?
Okay, so what about your mom?
My mom's was, as I said, very similar. She had, bumps in the middle of the night. At one point, she had what she said was like a low growl come out of my father's closet, who was out of town at the time. And my brother is an Orthodox Christian, and he actually had a priest come to the house and bless it. And I guess if you believe in that sort of thing, maybe there's some inherent power in it, but that seemed to stop it. And she told me this, and almost like my aunt did, sort of ashamed of it at first. And I think they told me this because I told them about the experience that I had, and I guess they figured maybe I would be a little more accepting of it. So,
Did your mom get along with your dad?
oh yeah, absolutely. He was just working out of town at the time, and they have a great relationship.
Steve?
Yeah, very solid.
Did your mom get along with your dad?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, so
they're still together, and we don't live there, so I assume it means they're pretty solid.
Here's something you may not know. Even in what they told you, do you think that there's any connection between the two hauntings?
I do. As a matter of fact, I'm almost sure of it. My aunt came and stayed the majority of the summer last year, and that's when it seemed to pick up for my mom. It was after she had left, and I'm almost certain that whatever this was followed her, or if she's the source of it, maybe she left something behind there, which you almost, you have to me at least, when someone says, oh, my house is haunted, I always wonder, well, maybe it's you specifically that's the problem, but that's what I suspect anyway. I don't have any really firm evidence to back that up. That's just...
And do they still live in these haunted locations?
They do. Yes, they do. My mom still lives in the same house I was raised in, and she still lives there. My aunt still lives in her second home, which she moved into, and she still claims that it's lesser now after consulting with this priest who came in, but or the situation is lessened rather. But she still says it's there, and she actually traveled to Florida and then claimed the same thing. Similar things happened to her while she was in Florida. Like I said, these are generally no nonsense people. They don't, I believe what they say. I believe.
Well, when it was happening in her house, did she just move in?
She had been living in her first home. She'd been living there for a few years, and she retired, and she had more time to spend at home, and At first, when she told me that, I thought to myself, well, maybe it's just your imagination getting the better of you. But, as she told me that she was lying asleep on the couch one night, um, she woke up, something startled her. She sat up and she said, she looked to her immediate right and she saw something that she described it as something that darted up the stairs very suddenly, just a black shadow. And, when she described it to me, just the tone of her voice, she was genuinely fearful, you could tell. Um, and I believed what she said. And I thought, well, obviously you've got something there, or maybe it's you. It's hard to say.
So then what was your first paranormal experience?
My first one was when I was in the 7th grade. I was sitting in a world geography class, and I was in this group at school that traveled to these surrounding schools, and we did these little shows. It was a sort of like an extracurricular type thing. We did puppet shows for children and things like that. It was really just because there were a lot of girls in this group, and so it was an in. But I had there was another guy who was actually supposed to pick me and a friend up and take us to this other school. He was in this group as well, but he was in high school. He was kind of the manager of the group, and I had a sudden realization that we were going to have a car accident. But it was just so plain to me that it was just like, I'm going to have an accident. I'm going to be in an accident on the way home. And, it was, or on the way there, it was just doubtless to me that it was going to happen. And it was raining outside. And when this guy picked us up, we started on our way there, and we were on the road for maybe 20 minutes. He was driving at a pretty good clip, like any high school age guy would do. And I kept saying, slow down here. Let's slow down a little bit, because I was nervous thinking about this. And finally, we were almost there when we hit a puddle on the road, hydroplaned, spun off the road, and basically came to a stop in a ditch. But, just moments before that, I'd been telling him, slow down, you're driving too fast. And I almost owe us not having a worse accident, or it seems to me at least that we would have had a worse accident if I hadn't been saying, slow down, because I guess it was a premonition that something bad was going to happen to me.
Well, have you ever thought something like that before? Like, had this sort of dreaded feeling of something going to happen and then it doesn't happen?
No, I do get feelings of dread, and to me, I have a good intuition. I don't have I can't make a claim that that this happens all the time, because it doesn't. Obviously, I can pick an incident out and say this happens, but generally, I trust my intuition, and it's right.
You know who's punching their wall right now is Joe Gooch. Why isn't that me? He predicts ear infections and me finding coins. That's the extent of it.
Well, it could be something in it. You never know.
So, all right. So, and that was what age again?
I was in the 7th grade, so I'd have to work out exactly what age that would be. Maybe 13, somewhere around in there.
Okay, and then next, what was the next?
The next one was the incident in question that I posted on the message board. In 2000, a friend had stopped by my house, basically, and it was kind of late in the evening, but he asked me, do you want to go and see this mutual friend? And I said, sure. The friend that had stopped by, his name was Jamie, and he was a good guy. He and I sort of palled around a lot. We were both young bachelors. It was kind of the thing to do, so we were going to go to see this guy who had been in an accident. He had been in an ATV accident, and he had broken his leg, bruised his pelvis really badly. He was really seriously hurt. And I'd been meaning to get by there, so when he stopped by, I said, yeah, sure, I'll ride up there with you. And I drove. We rode up to, he was staying at his girlfriend's house, and I think that the location is really key to a lot of this, or at least I think it is. There's this area that I still live near it now. It is sort of, I'm in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, so this area is really what you would consider the peak of the foothills. Any further on beyond this, and you get into really a mountainous area.
Wait a minute, but you sound educated.
Yeah, it's really unusual, isn't
Sorry.
it? But go figure. But the but as we actually drove up there, and it was very uneventful. And the place is really pretty. This is a former Cherokee Indian land, and it's still there's almost no one that lives there. There's clusters of homes, and there's some older buildings up there. But what happened was, is the people who lived in the mountains there migrated south. They moved to the closer to where the rail lines were. And the town I live in now is where most of these people wound up. This would have been sort of in between. So, you've got some, little pockets of homes here or there, but there's almost nothing there. It's really heavily wooded. A lot of trails. A lot of people use it for backpacking and outdoor type things. Four-wheeling or hiking, things like that. It's right up next to a nuclear power plant. That is, I guess it's intentionally built sort of out in the middle of nowhere. So a good portion of this property is fenced off. It's posted with no trespassing. And then the rest has been opened up for recreational use of whatever type. Well, their homes were sort of in between these two things. He and I went up there, and we weren't there for long. I think it seems like we took him some cigarettes or something like that. And it was more of just like we're Southerners, so it was a compulsory thing. We need to stop in and, make sure the guy's all right. So we did, and we were there very briefly, less than an hour. And nothing really happened until we left. When we left there, and the geography of the area is that there is a loop around a ridge, and they lived on the far side of this loop. You would enter this loop at a single point. And that was the entrance and the exit. There's a sign there. And the houses are on the far side of this loop. And when we pulled out and came back towards this entrance and exit, we're talking about several miles to drive here. We would have passed on our left-hand side. There's only one other road that branches off, and it's maybe a half-mile long section of crushed gravel. It's really almost a dirt road that leads out to an older church that's been there for a long time. Well, that's really the only turnoff. And as we left, we passed this on our left, and we should have at that point gotten to the exit to leave this area. We didn't. We continued to drive, and I thought to myself, we've missed it, somehow. And so he and I were both looking at it, looking for it, because it was dark outside. And so we turned around, we went back, and this is where, the whole thing came unglued for both of us, I think, is that as we returned back the opposite direction, we not only did not see the entrance or exit to this community, we saw, once again, this yield sign on the left-hand side of the vehicle, just as we had passed it before. It was like we had rerun the same piece of ground again, going the same direction. And, it was an immediate realization for both of us that this had happened. And, we were sort of nervously laughing about it, like, that's weird.
Because you've been up there a number of times.
Yeah, I'd been up there before. I'd been up there before during the daylight. The place is kind of creepy. I mean, it has just being so isolated, it has the air of isolation, and you're out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing but pine trees and rocks. That's the end of it. But that didn't help any. But we started to, and this is what we did for the next 2 hours, which I know is a ridiculous amount of time, but we would turn around, we would stop dead in the road, try to sort it out. I mean, this went on, but inevitably, no matter which kind of move we made, we would always return to that same point with that sign on the left of the vehicle. And it was, I'm sort of a rationalist, and I believe that, I want to believe like, well, this can't be. There's got to be that's what I'm going to go to first. There's a simple explanation for this that, we've gotten off on some sort of road here that's similar but not quite the same. And all this time that this is going on, obviously we're beginning, increasingly panicked. I don't think that was,
Well, at what point in the 2 hours did you get panicked? Because I think I'd be panicked sooner than 2 hours.
Oh yeah, I mean within a very short amount of time.
Did you have a
And
compass or anything like that?
oh no, and this was, it was totally dark outside. At the time I had um a Z28. I know it's terrible, but I owned it. And it was it drained gas. And so when we left to go there, I had a quarter of a tank of gas. By all rights, we should not have been able to drive for that amount of time. It should have drank the gas. I mean, it did drink the gas. Driving anywhere for 2 hours was, a pretty significant expense as far as gas goes. So,
But did
yeah,
it drink any gas?
no, it didn't.
Did your
Very
mileage
little.
go up on the odometer?
And I didn't even think to look at the odometer. The gas. He and I began to discuss that issue because he kept saying, what if we run out of gas? What are we going to do? And he was I'm trying to think of the right way to say this without come off sounding like an ass, but he was a person who he wasn't unintelligent. He was just very grounded. He just wasn't very imaginative, and so I mean, it totally sort of turned him on his ear. And which is not to say that I wasn't. I mean, I was I was solidly freaked out. Um, but I actually stopped the car at one point and was like, all right, let's think about every turn that we've made over this period of time. And, let's surely if we drive around here at some point and we keep stopping and we keep looking at the windows, we're going to see the houses which should still be here. You know, if by all rights, even if we can't locate the exit to this community, we can still find the homes that are here, and we can go in and say, "Hey, can we follow you out?" But we could never find them.
Can I ask a quick question? Did you
Sure.
Were you playing music?
We weren't. I know I was at first. I know I turned it down because, or I know that I turned the radio off just because it seemed like a distraction, and I remember doing that.
Did you have
And
windows open?
yeah, we actually we had the windows rolled down at first. The longer we were out there, eventually we rolled the windows up, and eventually I stopped getting out of the car because, I was increasingly frightened. Which, he kept saying, "What about the gas?" And I kept looking at the gas needle and thinking, "Well, this thing's going to dive on me at any second."
Mm. Did you hear anything out there? Crickets or any sort of night noise that you remember?
Not a thing. And I should have heard. I mean, there's all sorts of animal sounds you're going to hear up here in the middle of the night: bobcats, squirrels. If you're up here, and even like where my home is now, I'm actually talking to you outside, and I can hear uh, hound dogs. I can hear frogs, but there was nothing. It was sort of unsettling in that I could see the distance away from the road, pine trees, and there's lots of pines. There's some hardwood, but I couldn't see anything beyond that. And I kept trying to go back and think to myself, what should normally be here? Should we have a break in the terrain? Should we have rocks? And try to remember what it looked like in the daylight, but I never got past what looked like just like a wall of nothing that I couldn't see into. And I even several times actually turned my headlights to angle into the woods to make sure that we weren't missing the houses which should be there. And the time, I didn't notice the time slipping by at first, and I actually worked out how long we were on the road after the fact because I know what time I got home. So at the time, it just sort of flew by because I guess just because we were freaking out. I mean, there's really no other way to describe it. And I was trying to be sensible about it and say, wait, just let's, and I kept saying, just calm down. Everything's fine. This is going to work out. But eventually, and for whatever reason, during this entire time, I had never turned down this church road. And I have no idea why it never dawned on me to turn down and at least inspect that, because obviously we're going in a loop for this long period of time. Well, we turned down this church road, and there was a slight dip, and it was like the only thing if you've ever been outside right before there's a bad thunderstorm and you can feel that the static gathering on you. We have bad thunderstorms here, and especially during the summer, and that's what it felt like to me. It felt like all the muscles in my neck were drawn. It felt, like my eyes were bugging out. It was a very distinct feeling. Just and he and I were, if our butts were on the seats of the car, I would have been surprised. And it was an immediate feeling. Then we had a very thick ground fog very suddenly. And I
And this is after 2 hours.
Somewhere around in that, sort of the end of this period.
Okay.
When we went down into this fog, if it had been later in the year, I would have thought it was a freezing fog. I don't know if you're familiar with what that is.
Not really.
It usually only happens in the West, although I've seen it happen here. It's called a pogonip. It's a really thick ground fog, and whenever it hits, it will freeze around. But because it's so heavy with moisture, it hugs the ground. And that's what I would have thought it was, but it was only October, which is, the fall. It wasn't that cold out. It was a little cold, and it was so thick that, my headlights barely cut into it. And so I had really slowed the car to just almost a creep. And so as we're creeping down this road, I start to see eyes in the darkness. I mean, really slam on the brakes. And, I adjust my high beams, low beams, and I realize what we're seeing is deer. I could see them coming out of the fog. I could see their heads sticking up. And there's nothing unusual to see deer here. I hit one in my car last year and totaled it. I mean, there are a lot of them around, but this was so many of them that it was impossible. I mean, I've seen groups of 2 or 3. There were too many of them to count. They were everywhere. They weren't running. They weren't. They weren't like ambling around like you would expect animals to be. They were just staring at us. And for a couple of seconds, he and I just sat there and stared. I mean, it was just so bizarre. There's really no other way to say it. We sat there and stared at it. And finally, he was like, back up, turn the car around. And I did a 3-point turn, and we came out of this fog, back up onto the road. And when we came out of this fog, back up onto the road, it was like immediately right there, past this yield sign, was the exit. It was like, that's it. It's over. We pulled out onto the highway, and I'm driving at a ridiculous speed, just obviously. And as I pull out onto the road, the headlights of the car just go off. It was immediately pitch dark outside my car, and which it couldn't be because the headlights on those it was just a pull knob. So if you pulled it out into the first pull, you would have your headlights and, your exterior running lights, and then the interior lights for the car. If you pulled it out all the way, then your headlights would come on. Well, there was no exterior illumination at all. I mean, it was just so dark you couldn't see anything. But the exterior illumination was still on, so I knew that the lights were off outside. So that's not possible. The car's just not wired like that. And they immediately came back on. I actually had time enough to reach down and pull the knob to make sure that I hadn't hit it with my knee or something like that. And it was pulled all the way out. But just like that, they came back on. We were back out on the road, and whatever this was over.
So, what color was the fog?
Just a dense white. There wasn't anything that, other than being so unusually thick and close to the ground. The fog itself was not remarkable. And as far as I didn't see any distinct colors or anything like that.
And the deer, were they? I take it they weren't immersed in it. They were just standing around, and the fog was maybe at their knees.
Oh no, it would have been higher than that because it was about at the window level of my car, maybe a little about mid window level.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and when we came through this fog, it was almost like it broke on the other side. Only thing I could see was off to my left, a sort of uh, off to the edge of the road. The shoulder dropped down maybe 2 feet, and there was a line of trees, and that was mostly what I could see was off to the left. That and my entire field of view off to my left was filled with deer and their heads sticking up, looking directly at us. Off to my right, up on the road in front of us, and just to the right, it was a little harder to see because my headlights were falling flatly on that fog. So there were, you could still see they were still there as well. I mean, I could see their legs. I could see them a lot more clearly. But they're just not herds of deer. They don't travel like that I know of, or at least not since this place was you know thousands of years ago, maybe, I guess. But
did they have color to them? I mean, do they look like deer in?
they looked like normal deer, and I've seen many deer.
And with the
there was
windows
nothing.
with the windows down, did the fog come in the car?
It didn't come in the car. And to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't have noticed had it, because he and I were, just paralyzed with fear. And it wasn't the fog that had made me fearful. I was already scared. Obviously, I was confused and upset, but I didn't have this. I wasn't paralyzed with fear until we set out down that road, and then it was immediate. Before we even hit it, just this feeling like, oh my God, just he and I were both practically writhing in our seats, just with, I don't know if it was the anticipation that something was going to happen, or, if it was something else that I just couldn't see with my senses that made us like that.
Well, when you say that you were surrounded by them and you did a 3-point turn, how close were they to the car? You had enough room to maneuver there, right?
Yeah, I had enough room to turn to the left, to back up, and to not hit any of them. But there were enough so that, I would say there was maybe a 10, 12, maybe a little more gap between the edge of the road and where I could see this collection of them begin. None of them darted out of our way. None of them, and usually when you see a deer, it's not unusual for them to be frozen in headlights, because that's basically why they stop on the highway and you hit them. But by all rights, this was a loud car. And I was sitting still. They should have ran. They should have scattered. They should have gone every which direction.
Did you
But
get
they
the
didn't.
sense that they were alive? I mean, thinking about it now, were they still as statues, and you just
They were
assumed
still
they
as
were
statues.
alive? Or
Yeah.
did you get the sense that could you see them breathing in the fog?
You couldn't see them breathing, but if they were statues, then they would have had to have been aligned so that they were all looking directly at us. There was no. There were none of them that were looking away. It was like being under 100 set of eyes at one time, very suddenly. I mean, they were all. The intent was very plain that they were looking at us.
And when you left the fog bank, did you look in the rear view? Was the fog
No,
still there?
no, I didn't.
No, screw that.
Yeah, I did. I didn't look behind us. I had the pedal down, and that car moved along pretty swiftly. And that's what I did. We, for all intents and purposes, ran. And we'd been, in a sense, running that whole time, but in starts and stops, So
Did they look like normal deer that you would find in the area in your time?
They were healthy. I'll say that. They didn't, there was nothing about them that indicated to me that they were just other than deer. It was just their behavior was totally off. As I said, I've seen plenty of them, and I've never seen any behave like that. I wouldn't have gotten out of the car at a threat of death. That's how bizarre it was. Yeah.
Well, do you think, okay, it was 2 hours, but do you have the memory of, you must have been bored and frustrated and all of that for 2 hours.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Was it 2 hours of missing time, or do you remember going through the motions for 2 hours?
I remember that I don't have an uninterrupted memory of the trip, and I've thought about that. Was it missing time? But I think it's more like time just slipped by me. We were out there, and at first, like I said, we were getting in and out of the car. We were looking around, stopping and starting, and this loop is sort of several miles. So even though we arrived at the same point each time, it felt like I was driving for a while to arrive there. So it wasn't like I feel like I never got the sense that it was any kind of and I've thought about all of these things over the years. I've made lists about, is it possible that this is I've had some sort of traumatic episode, and because of this traumatic episode, my brain has filled in this to sort of bridge that gap. And I don't think that I've never done anything like that in my life. I've never had, been prone to that, so it doesn't feel like it. And I've scrutinized it fairly closely, and I just don't think that that's the case. I don't think there was missing time. I think it just took that long.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were out there, I try to think about what would have taken that long. I guess just being on the road for that long. And I could be kidding myself there, but that's what it feels like. That doesn't seem like there's anything in there that's other than the whole episode that's that's hinky or off.
Well, how fast were you driving that loop? If it's several miles, if we do the math in our head here, about how fast were you going?
It's gradual. There's not a lot of sharp turns there. I mean, it is a gradual thing.
How many loops do you remember making?
Oh gosh, probably 20 or more.
Oh my god! See, yeah. I would have been freaking out long before 20 or more.
Oh yeah, it was far more than 20, because that's how I started to not think about this fact that we were going to see this yield sign. I accepted it, and I was like, just don't think about it. It's not going to be there this time. This time we're going to be out on the road.
And did you do the 3-point turn just the once, or had you done it before that?
Oh yeah, I'd done it before that.
So you'd gone backwards around that loop.
Yeah, I'd gone backwards, I'd gone forwards, and it didn't matter if I went backwards or forwards. I arrived at the same point in the road, facing the same direction every single time.
Wow, that is freaky.
Yeah.
The closest thing I have to even being able to relate to that is just, I think I talked about this on the show. I think I was on a lunch break from work in Central Park at the duck pond, and I was sitting alone, and this line of ducks just came quacking along in the water, and then all at once they stopped, and like dominoes, one by one they turned and just stared at me.
Oh, okay. Wow.
That was like demonic or something. That was like
the power of the animal kingdom to freak you out. That's what that is. But it's I've told this story to a few people over the years, and inevitably they're going to say, well, you were just lost. And I'm like, no, there's nowhere to be lost there. And I've said that I've been there a number of times, and if I was lost there, I would have had to have been driving through the woods. There's nowhere else to go. There's no other roads that are right in this loop. So for anybody that says, well, you must have been lost. No. And also too, we weren't drinking, we weren't doing anything like that. And I just don't do it and drive, which is not to say I don't drink. I drink occasionally, but I would never drive.
This would stop me from driving and probably drive me to drinking.
Yeah, it's and here's the thing about that. My friend Jamie, I think it probably unhinged him pretty good. When I got home, I pretty much drugged my girlfriend out of bed. I was like, "You've got to listen to what happened to me," and I recount this story and the whole time he is just pacing nervously. He leaves, and that was pretty much it. We spoke each other in passing, but he was very, every time he looked like a caged rat. Just wild-eyed, pretty much. And my wife and I actually saw him last year at we have this. That's basically a county fair here every year, and he was white as a sheet when he saw me. All the color ran out of his face. I think it obviously affected him pretty profoundly. It did me, but I think him in just a different way.
Do you know anything about his background? Did he have any sort of paranormal stuff?
I don't think so. He wouldn't have been. He wouldn't have been the type to discuss that sort of thing.
Was that a lion I just heard? What was that noise?
I'm sorry that I moved my phone just to make sure I was getting good signal
Okay.
there. Yeah, sorry about that. But he wouldn't have been the type to discuss that sort of thing. He was he's just a very concrete, down to earth kind of guy.
And so you must have looked into the lore of the area, yeah?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And my family is very closely bound to this area, meaning that we've always lived here. My grandfather told me that one of his first memories was edging up to a windowsill to watch a man be hanged at a crossroads that is not far from where this place is. And that was one of his, one of the first memories he had. My family is from the area that is just above this, the heavily wooded area. They were Irish stonemasons that settled in the area. They were here when Daniel Boone explored the territory. So, the Daniel Boone. So they've been here for a long time. And I'm not that far from there now. My home is not that far from there now. But I would certainly never go back up there ever again for any reason.
But as far as, what are we calling this? I don't know, animal mist sightings. And have you read anything about anything like that?
There's nothing there. I mean, you said, obviously and there was actually a link posted on the message board, which is probably the most I've seen, especially about deer, and deer specifically, which were, I think, described as our four-legged brothers. But I almost don't think, I think if we had continued to the end of that road, the whole episode would have been a lot more revealing. The road that the church is on. Yeah, I mean, I think of it, honestly, I do. Whether it would have been good or bad. And although it seems too easy when you think about the incident as a whole, obviously we were being prompted to turn down this road. Why it never dawned on me to turn down this road, obviously, when we're arriving at it repeatedly for all this period of time, my mind the whole time was, well, it's just a marker. I never made that connection. Maybe I should go down here. But obviously we didn't investigate it any further. And that, to me, I've always been real hesitant to think that, because I think, well, that's just so, I don't know. It just seems too easy. It's almost
it's like a movie.
Yeah. It's like a movie, and I don't want it to be that easy.
Do you know what's down there?
Yeah, there's a church. There's like a one-room church. I don't even know if there's a graveyard down there on the far side of it. But I don't even know if the church is still open. I know that there's one down there.
It's open for one more.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's kind of the feeling I had, was like, oh, that's just goofy. That's just too theatrical. But if you think about it in the context of the story, it makes sense. Arriving at the same place, I wonder how long we would have gone on in a circle had I not turned left.
Have you looked up deer symbolism and what the fact of deer could mean? If they're prodding you to go down Church Street to a church, is there anything there worth tugging on?
Nothing that I found. I sort of looked at the incident as, a few possibilities. I looked at it as, because I never really thought about it in connection. I never really took it that far. I pulled out the bits of it that, that you hear about a lot in the paranormal, missing time, screen memories, things like that, things that I could apply to the situation. And I never really thought until just actually pretty recently about, well, what if it was the place? What if what if there was more to it? What if there was, if you take out those common pop culture elements that I might be able to relate it to. If you take those things out, then you have the area, the deer themselves as a symbol, the fog is a symbol, but there was nothing there that I could ever get a hold of. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I mean, it was a lot easier to lean on those crutches. The other things, well, maybe it's a screen memory, and just because that sounds, convenient, almost like turning down the road was convenient. But
Were they all male or female, or was it a mixture?
it was a mixture. Some of them had, like a rack, their antlers. Some of them did not. A rack in this case being antlers as opposed to identification of a female.
Right.
But there were some that didn't have them, but they were all, not even so much as an ear twitch. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. I can't sum it up, and I know that just seems, asinine. Anybody else would say, "So what? It's a deer," but but they were really creepy deer. Let me tell you. I know it was enough to really change the way I thought about things forever, for sure.
And have you talked to people who live around there? If they've ever seen anything like that?
Yeah. I've talked to people that lived around there. I've talked to the guy that we went and visit. I went and visited up there. I don't know where he is now. I talked to him not long after the incident, and he was like, "Well, I've never had anything like that happen up here." He goes, everybody knows that it's creepy up here after dark, and it is. But it's nothing that you can really put your finger on and say, well, here's why it is. It's just kind of it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's no place you'd want to be alone, by any stretch of the imagination. But there was never anything that anyone gave to me in connection to it that could say that I could relate this incident to. Never. Anyone I told it to, and there's only been a handful of people, obviously quite a few more now, but there's only been a handful of people that I have told it to, and, invariably they're, "Oh, well, you were lost," or, "Wow, that's a lot of deer," but, it's difficult to relate it and say, the deer is just the tip of the iceberg. There's the driving in a loop forever, the whole thing with the lights of the car going off. It was... there's so many elements there that are far beyond just the being lost.
Were you on Hawk Mountain by any chance?
No.
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 Looking online now, looking for anything that looks like this.
It's actually called Hogback. Hogback.
Oh, Hogback Mountain.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, believe it or not.
That's even creepier.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go there anyway. You'd screw the deer ghost. That's the least of your problems.
Yeah, it's just I think due to the shape of it, it looks like almost like a wild boar from a distance.
And so, was this the last of your experiences, or was there something after this?
I think that it tuned me in a way, and I know you guys have sort of mentioned this before. I've been real careful about that because, hey, I don't want to sort of go down the rabbit hole, and I think that it made me a lot more accepting of things that would have happened around me normally that I would attribute to just natural things or coincidence or chance. I think it made me a lot more likely to look at those things and say, "Man, that's weird," or I just guessed that was going to happen before it happened. Things like that. But I never committed myself to it fully because I can see how, once you start down that road, it's difficult to get away from it. I know that there are a lot of people that live up there that I would consider pretty unusual. I put this on the message board. My grandmother actually took me to a woman up there once who was, for all intents and purposes, a witch. I'm very badly allergic to poison ivy, and I got it. I had it. I was eaten up with it. I had it so badly that I had knots of it under the top layer of my skin. I was swollen grotesquely with it. That I had multiple shots of steroids, creams. My grandmother takes me to this woman who, her house was just bizarre. It was almost barren except for, she had a couch in her living room, no television, nothing else in there. She goes behind this curtain, comes back out, and she's like, all right, that's it. He's going to be fine now. And I was. The next day, the poison ivy was almost gone. And my mom was absolutely amazed by this. She's a rationalist herself, and they couldn't, no one could get over it. It was like it went away almost instantly. Um, and this was after all these treatments that just did nothing for it. I mean, I was out of school, but I think that there's a remnant of oddity up there still. And the whole place, like I said, has a bad vibe.
Do people have superstitions and all of that sort of thing? Is that
Oh yeah,
prevalent up there?
absolutely, absolutely. People, my mother-in-law is one who would believe a warning in a dream almost immediately. People still use home remedies.
But these are Christians primarily, right?
They are.
I
They
mean,
are. So,
is there a discrepancy there? I mean,
to me, there kind of is. It's almost like a bastardization of paganism and Christianity. It's like they've had a weird child and it's gone off to live somewhere. But which is
living
kind
in
of
the
what this
mountains.
is. Yeah, that's
Did you ever go and visit the guy?
Did I ever go and visit the whom again? I'm sorry.
Weren't you going off to visit somebody, to check in on someone?
Oh yeah, we did. I'm sorry, I may have rambled through that part in the beginning, but yeah, we were there for I don't know, less than an hour, and it was just a casual, hey, how's it going? Good to see you're alive. Which he was badly hurt, so it was.
But have you seen him since then? I mean, did you ever go back?
Oh yeah, I talked to him once after the fact, and not there, at his house, and I kind of told him that something weird had happened, and I didn't give him the full story, but I let him know something this sort of strange had happened to us, and he was the one who said, yeah, I've never heard of anything happening like that, and he was the one who was kind of that's a lot of deer type of thing, and I'm like, okay. He wouldn't have been a very good guy to talk to with this about.
Now, what about just the standard trickster questions in terms of anti-structure in your life or your friend's life?
It was pretty anti-structural. I mean, my life was fairly anti-structural then, just because, I worked, but, me and my friends were, we ran around, did the typical things that guys between, I don't know, 20, 26, 27 do, which was to say, a lot of misbehaving, but there was never anything that, it wasn't off the page. I mean, it wasn't ridiculous, but, I had every night was something different. I didn't really have a structure beyond the fact that I went to work. Every day was a little different.
In the days, not even the weeks, but just the days that followed this, maybe the first week, maybe the first 10 days, somewhere in there, what was your sort of, I mean, how long did it take you to get over it? What was your emotional attitude?
It took me months to get over it.
Were you looking for things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was afraid I honestly was afraid to leave the house when it got dark. I didn't want to drive in the dark. I had an episode not too long after that where I got turned around. Believe it or not, I was dropping off a friend's in this neighborhood, and it was Halloween, and I was trying to be very careful and not hit a kid, driving around. And there was lots of side roads, and I got turned around, and there were a lot of, it's one of these neighborhoods that is a forever, one cul-de-sac here, another one there. And I got kind of turned around and immediately almost just lost it because I was like, oh no, not again, But as it just turned out, I just made a wrong turn. I was able to easily find my way back.
Did you find that at least maybe even just psychosomatically, things were jumping out at you? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to ask here is we talk about, when you start paying attention to this stuff, it pays attention back. Looking back, do you get any sense that there was something you could have followed up on if you wanted to, or if you had stuck with
Yes.
that raw emotion of the moment, if that had followed you for months, could you have built some sort of odd relationship with the paranormal in the way that we talk about?
Absolutely. And I have no doubt about it. I was, and as I said before, I was almost oversensitive to that fact. even though, this was before I heard, and one of the things I've liked about listening to you guys' shows is that you've mentioned that specifically and repeatedly, is that if you focus on this, and you could just get lost in it, and I see how people do so easily, um, because something when you have an episode like this, it feels like you just scratched the surface of weirdness, um, and I made a conscious effort to try to not. I wanted to look into it. I wanted to know. Obviously it affected me, and obviously, I'm talking to you about it 12 years later. Um, I spend the majority of my days in a job where I can put some headphones on and work, and I listen to paranormal podcasts. I read articles related to it, and I'm always looking for that one thing that I can sort of relate back to my own experience, and which so I can say in a way that it drew me in, but I never went so far as to let it draw me totally in. I'd be scared to do that based on the experience that I had. It was pretty profound.
Well, what about, do you know anything about the layout of the land? I know you'd mentioned the nuclear reactor, but were there power lines around there?
Oh yeah, there's there's two areas there that the part that is partitioned off is where these feeder lines, massive steel structures, and they have those feeder lines that come down into the town that I live in, and so they don't want anyone there. But the adjoining land is it's just a bunch of cut-in trails, and people go up there with 4x4s and stuff like that, and go up through these narrow passes and stuff like that. And I guess that's a sort of a sporting thing to do, but it's a very it's a wild place. It's nowhere you'd want to be after dark. There's sometimes a rowdy element that's there. The whole I would say the whole area, and that sort of adds to me, I mentioned before, the whole place has a really, um, there's sort of an unsettling feel to it. And my grandfather telling me about seeing the man being hanged, that just was sort of icing on the cake. I thought, this place has just got just bad juju all over it.
In fact, I'm surprised that there's not a lot of lore about that church. If there's just this one-room old church down Church Road or Church Street, you would think that there would be just a ton of stuff about that, in the air.
It's not really.
Don't go to the old church on Old Church Road.
Right,
that,
right. You'll regret it.
No little old lady wiggling a shaky finger at you, telling you not to do it.
No, nothing like that. I mean, it's, as far as I know, it's just it's a little bitty community church. I'm not sure if it's still in use, and I'm not sure if it was really in use at the time. But I've known it was down there, just because as you sort of pass by it above it. You can almost see it off in the distance, and there's a little adjoining building to it that is like it's an outdoor. It's just a roof with poles, basically. I don't know if they do something outside there or service outside or something like that, but there are headstones down there. So I didn't associate it anything bad with the church being there. I think it could have been anything on the end of the street. Or anything on the end of this road. It wasn't really a street.
Are there Indian burial grounds around there?
Honestly, I don't know. One would assume, just because, obviously one would assume there's probably Indians buried all over the place up there. This is Cherokee land. I think that they moved off of this land maybe late 1800s, somewhere around in there. They were pretty much rounded up, I think, reservations further up north into North Carolina. We're right on the border where we are here. But they were rounded up further into North Carolina, and obviously there was a big march of them to the west, which is sort of a sad story. But
is there anything about deer specifically up in that area? I mean, even... do they take pride in their stock of deer? Anything at all you can think of?
No, nothing like that. I mean, there are deer hunters here. There are plenty of deer hunters, but people, if you want to shoot a deer, and do it the easy way, you would have to bait a field, and then you'd be lucky to shoot one. they're around, obviously. As a matter of fact, just a few months ago, I walked out and got in my truck and looked to my left, and there was one standing below my house, creepily enough, just looking at me. But when he realized I had recognized him, he quickly ran into the bushes. But it's a one-off. It's a wooded area, so there's obviously going to be them around. And I hit one in a car last year, or a truck rather, and tore my truck up pretty good. But there was, you're never going to see a huge group of them. You may see two together, three tops. And usually when you see two together, it's because one of them is obviously pursuing the other one.
How many
For
would you
whatever,
estimate were there?
more than 100.
Wow.
It filled my, and that's just a guess because it was almost my entire field of vision. And I can see it just as plain as day now. There were so many of them that if there had been 20 of them, even, I would have been like, "Holy crap! Look at all these deer!" I would have never looked at them and screeched in terror. Obviously.
Have you ever thought about going back to down Old Church Road and see what's down there?
No, 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 never.
Come on, we need to know if there's a vampire.
No, I could never do it. As a matter of fact, there's a major highway the route that runs there. It's a very scenic highway. Lots of tourists here. They film a lot of motorcycle commercials here because it's really pretty. The road just below it. But there's state parks nearby, and I even get in the immediate area. I mean, I almost have a visceral response to it because that's how out of whack everything is. I mean, I don't consider myself a person that's easily influenced or stupid, and just even being near it is enough to make me uneasy. Just proximity. Just because I know what happened was impossible. It just couldn't be. So, that's enough right there to just make me never go there because I don't want to know.
Well,
maybe with an armed contingent, maybe
Yeah.
I would go there. But
being that you were terrified, do you think that it was demonic?
I don't. I feel like yeah, I don't know. It's just my personal opinion, but I think evil is kind of dumb. And this didn't strike me as dumb. You know what I mean? Things that are evil are things that are dumb and just hateful and ignorant. Because you meet people that you think, well, this person is evil, and it's not because they're smart. It's because they're just, there's nothing nuanced about evil. It's just evil and ugh. But in the case of this, it was, if there was something that was more in your face about the incident, like boogeyman jumps out of the bushes, then it would be a lot easier to grasp, I think. But the fact that it was almost, it built to this, and then it was almost like, well, that's it, it's over. So to me, there's obviously something for me to learn there. What it is, I don't know, or I've never been able to sort it out.
What do you think? I mean, what's your best guess? What did it feel like?
If I had to guess, and this is another thing that sounds like almost, too sci-fi or too pat to me, is that we were briefly somewhere else. I don't know if our being on this loop was being, he and I were somehow cognizant of the fact that we were in this loop doing this thing over and over again. And then when we went down this road, somehow we fell out of that and we were briefly somewhere else where maybe that many deer would not be uncommon. Just their reaction to us was not fear. It was not anything. It was just more like there was no reaction. So that's the best I've been able to sort out. And like I said, it's almost like the very turning down this road itself, thinking, well, maybe I was being led to do that. It just sounds too pat and too easy of an answer.
Looking back now, What is all this about? I mean, you consider yourself a rational person. You grew up in a religion, but I take it you weren't a religious person.
I'm not very religious. I mean, I will go to church occasionally, but I'm not. I'm far from religious. And in the South is an entirely different matter. When you say you're religious in the South, you may be a little dangerous. you know, that's what that is, and I'm not. I'm definitely not that.
Then what does this do for you? Does this tell you, okay, there's more to life than what I know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And up until that point, I was never a person to really take. If somebody else had told me this story, I'd have been like, that's very interesting. But after the fact, it was hard for me to tell anybody about it because my immediate impression was, well, they're going to think I'm lying, or they're going to think that that I've gone crazy or been influenced in some way. And that was just because that's my own projection onto it. I would never have thought something like this would have happened unless it happened to me. I mean, I would have been entertained by the story, but by the very fact that it happened to me, I just,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I guess maybe my last question is: have you found anything in physics that's
no,
like this?
no. You hear about people who have, and I've read a lot about, displacement, people who have appeared in different places, a great distance from where they began, and they have no idea how they've gotten there. And I've always really scrutinized those very carefully for something um, that I can relate to this incident, because obviously I'd like to have you know. And that's the reason why I posted on the message board originally was I was kind of hoping that somebody would say, "Oh, you know what? I've got something pretty close or something similar." But that's I've never seen anything that I can honestly say, "Oh, well, here's proof. Here's physical proof, or here's a scientific basis for what happened to me."
Well, did you hear the Strieber story? That sounds like this.
No, I haven't.
I think it's in his book Breakthrough. I'm not certain, and I think he might have even talked about it on one of our episodes. But basically, he was bringing a friend of his son Andrew's home
Okay.
from a sleepover or something, and he took the normal exit, but then ended up in this place with these crazy-looking buildings that had they looked like stone buildings that had snakes carved on them.
What was the name of this book again? I'm
I
sorry.
think it was in Breakthrough, Whitley
Okay.
Strieber.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's the one. If not, I'll correct it on the after chat.
Sure.
But he and the kid both saw this and were both scared, and he sort of jokes with you. Maybe what would have happened if I had gotten out of the car and gone and knocked on one of these doors,
Oh God, yeah, no, don't want to do that. You turn around, is what you do.
Yeah, well, somehow they got back up onto, somehow they ended up back on the highway and back going the right direction. So yeah, I will try to confirm that book is Breakthrough, and maybe I'll read from it or something in the after chat. Who knows? Since Jeff's not here.
There you go. Kill some time, right?
But Steve, thank you so much for going in depth in this experience and for sharing all of this with us.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to do it. As I said, just like I posted on the message board, hopefully someone will hear it and say, "Hey, I've had something similar happen." So you never know.
Yeah. So if anyone out there hears this, get on that message board and let him know. Let us all know, and then come on the show.
There you go.
We'll do a roundtable of mist discussion.
I'll be here.
And actually, one more question for the road. I mean, since it is a sort of a mist or fog phenomenon, I mean, I'm sure you've read up on fog phenomena before, yeah?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's time displacement associated with fog phenomena. Obviously, the famous Bermuda Triangle fog, electronic fog. I think the guy called it, but
anything with animals?
Nothing that I've really found. Well, obviously, you see it in a lot of stories that are, they're especially involving cryptids. maybe there's fog, and that always seems to be present. But I always question whether or not it's a dramatic element or whether or not it's
You still question that, do you?
I can't help but do it. I can't help but do it. And until I read that, I went into the fog and, there were 50 werewolves staring at me instead of, just the one. Then I'll know, I'm onto something here. But
Nothing yet. All right.
Nothing yet. Yeah, nothing yet.
Well, I will be on the lookout. Thank you again, sir. And now I'm going to go wing an after chat.
Good luck to you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Yes, sir.
This is Chris Balzano, and you're listening to Paratopia.
Thank you. So the Jeff again.
So the Jer again.
Back here, I see.
Yeah, what happened?
You had missing time.
Oh.
Yeah. A fog has swallowed
Seamless.
you. Yeah.
Seamless.
For the listeners who actually paid attention to the show, not including Jeff, obviously.
Right.
I do need to say that I looked it up, and the Whitley Strieber account of turning off the interstate or the highway or whatever it was in the book Breakthrough. It was Route 17 in New Jersey, where he turned off with Andrew's friend, bringing him home from a party or some such thing. And they ended up in like this Flintstone-y looking place, a neighborhood full of like stone buildings with snakes and serpents etched into them. So,
and people bringing very large ribs that overturn your car.
Yabba dabba do. So there's that. But it could have just been New Jersey, because frankly, that place is gross.
Write your hate mail to Jeremy Vaeni, gmail.com.
So there's that. Moving right along, do you, the Jeff, have any fog bank stories in your memory bank? Yes.
Not that I can, immediately reference. No, I know that Lee has, of course, because he's talked about that on the episode, I think, where we first introduced him to the show. I think he spoke of the fog bank and then seeing the big bird that came very dangerously close to his windshield. I remember that, but for me, no, I can't think that there was ever any kind of fog bank thing.
Bird.
Yeah, bird.
That kind of bird? Like a snuffleupagus kind of friend?
More like the John Houseman bird. Mr. Bird. Yeah, so I don't, not to my knowledge, I don't remember anything right offhand with me that occurred that way, no.
What about, and this is something that happened to me, whether by nature or something else that I talked about a little bit on the show. What about just having animals that suddenly just stare at you, like en masse?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a couple times I can think of, in particular back in my hunting days in the way of deer, yes. But I have to say, as weird as a thing as that was, because I was alone at the time, I have gone hunting with friends and kind of walked up on whitetail deer in Maryland. I mean, are pretty prevalent as they are in a lot of these states. But I had at one point a 400-acre spot to hunt on, and that's, for those who aren't aware, freaking huge. And I'd gone in with friends before, and we'd walked up on a large buck, they get a velvet on their antlers at a certain time of year, and then they scrape that velvet off. And I've walked up on them doing that, and seen 3 or 4 on the hill watching us, watching him, that sort of thing. But I remember going back there one day and just walking around, and then finally taking a seat. And I don't know whether I fell asleep or whether I just became engrossed in my own thoughts. But after a while, I woke up, and there were about 4 or 5 deer standing directly in front of me, looking at me. And I wasn't even there really to hunt. I was there just to kind of scout out to see where they were. And well, they were right in front of me, and they just stood there staring at me. And I thought about that for a while. I mean, when I moved, they moved, of course, and took off. But I look at that and I go, well, knowing the animal thing the way I do, they really do wonder at some points what you are. If they can't smell you, which at this point that I'm talking about, there's no way they could have smelled me because the wind was in my face. They
Trust
were in
me,
front of me.
They smelled you.
Anyway, you look like you stink, Jared. Do you stink? And you know, I'm always of the opinion that a lot of the woodland creatures don't exactly know what the hell you are until they smell you. I think by sight they are genuinely curious, and I've been within, I mean, a matter of feet from live deer that should have been terrified of me walking. I mean, I'm taking steps and it's walking at me or adjacent to me. And until the wind changes direction, they don't move. They're just looking at you and kind of checking you out. And then you feel that breeze kind of shift and boom, they get scent of you and they're off. I found that to be a really big thing. And not only with them, but with fox and with raccoons and all sorts of woodland furry friends that simply don't know what you are until they smell you. So I don't know that I can count that as anything absurdly strange.
Do you think they'd think I'm a fart?
I think they would try to pee on you because they'd figure this is where the toilet is.
That's not nice, you bastard. I'm your friend.
You know I love you. Time for fun, right? So
I hate you.
So yeah, there's that. I mean, it's one of those things. And I might note that you know, farmers on tractors have been known to get so close to deer that they have to shoo them out of the way, and that's because they don't fear the tractor. They don't fear the piece of equipment. They fear the man on the back. But unfortunately, when a tractor's running and you've got the fumes from the gasoline burning and that sort of thing, they're more than aware, I think. As you've said before, that fish and animals, they seem to have like this personality about them when you're around them long enough. And I don't think that's ever so prevalent as when you're out in the woods. I mean, I've been snorkeling a number of times and I know what you're talking about, how, you know, the fish, it's just bizarre how they seem not to. I've told you my story about snorkeling in the Caribbean and having, you know, these I don't know, little squid kind of passing me in the water, and I put up the camera and they stopped. It was like they were posing for a picture, and when I snapped the picture and I put the camera down, they went on their merry way. I mean, that's real personality to me. And
well, you know what else? I was thinking about this because the last time I went snorkeling, I picked up a couple of rocks because they eat, you know, whatever is on the rocks that they eat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I picked them up and I smacked them together, and either the sound or the food dropping off of them attracts them. And then I've got allies, you know,
right.
And then we hunt in packs, you know, then they
right.
wait for me to do that again. And it's funny because I've certainly heard this argument about dogs. Oh, they're not really loving and friendly. It's just that you're feeding them.
Yeah.
You know? And you hear that about all kinds of animals. And so you can say that about fish. And I got to thinking, you know, that is such nonsense. That is such just a shallow, cold way to think about it. Food and hunting is like, what, 90% of their day? Yeah. So you're actually relating to them on their level in the language that they speak. And when you speak it and you show that you are friendly, then they love you, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's not just that you're feeding them, or it's not just, you know, if you stop feeding me, I'll go away. I mean, certainly dogs don't do that, right? Your pets don't just go away if you stop feeding them.
Exactly.
You're just speaking to them in the language that they get, you know?
Absolutely.
Language I get, trust me.
Well, I mean, I think for the woodland fellas, I think it's kind of the same sort of thing. They know what is there to harm them, and they know I mean, and I'm sure it's on some level it's instinctual, but I'm sure on another level it's when the tractor's coming through, there's nothing to fear, no matter how loud it is, and objectionable to the ear that it becomes to them. They know this is not something that's going to bother them, and so they just kind of walk out of the way. They don't run at breakneck speed away from it. I've seen that myself on multiple occasions, and by the same turn, I think when you've got a gun in your hand, I mean, I used to pheasant hunt a lot. I really, really liked that at the time. I think I was probably only 18 or 19 years old. But you basically walk a cornfield up and down the cornfield rows, and eventually you jump one up, and then you blast them out of the air. And I remember walking this field for, oh my God, it seemed like hours. I mean, it was just ridiculous, and I saw nothing. And as I'm getting towards the end, doubling back on myself, all of a sudden there was this blood-curdling scream like a woman in my ear screaming her head off. And I turn around, and here is this thing that has followed me. And I looked after he had jumped away and left. He had followed me through 3 rows of corn. 3 rows. And this was a long field. He followed behind me till just the right second where he could scare the living shit out of me. And he did. And so that was kind of the end of pheasant hunting for me, because I'm like, they're smarter than I am. I'm not doing this anymore. But yeah, I mean,
what would be interesting is, I mean, in a way, the opposite with sharks. They, or anything that can eat you probably, is not, are you going to get me food, but are you food? I mean, that's what a shark is interested in by all accounts, not just Ted Rowe, but everyone I've spoken to on this island is not as afraid of sharks as you would think everyone should be.
Right.
Because they understand that a shark is curious as to what a human is, just like you're saying about every other animal.
Absolutely.
And so once they figure out you're not food, I wonder if you could swim with them and become an ally of the shark. I wonder if anyone's ever tried that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that's something you be around with when you know, as you said, you take a rock into the water because that's what the little fishies like to eat off of and that sort of thing. So you're doing that. Well, I might note that if you have an open cut from a bottle cap on your toe, that's essentially what you're doing with the shark, is putting yourself on the little Ritz cracker and saying, lunch. So, that's the only thing I think to be mindful of that. But I mean, you could look at the role that scent plays in all of this stuff. I mean, go on YouTube and look up deer humping girl or something like that. This happens. I mean, this happens. And it's very clear to the deer that, I mean, it has to be very clear to the deer that this is not its species, I would think. Maybe the deer is not smart enough to understand that, but I've seen deer exhibit very, very intelligent behavior. And so I have a hard time believing the deer can't tell that it wants to nail a woman, a human woman. And that something doesn't compute there. But either the woman is going through her cycle, or she has, I mean, there are attractants that you can use. And one of them is deer piss that is, from a female who's in heat, that sort of thing, which will attract the male deer.
The other is breast implants, by the way.
That's correct. Yes. They love boobs.
We're gonna get so much hate mail for this after chat.
Well, it's okay. But that's one of the things, that you do is to hide your own scent. Not only do you you can put fox piss on your boots, or you can put deer piss on your boots, but not only that, it's an attractant. They'll see that, they'll smell it and go, ooh, I should go this way because there's a female here who wants to breed, and that's what I want. So, in that sense, they're not unlike us, although we don't put piss on our feet to go find a girlfriend.
Well,
I don't. Jeremy does occasionally, but I don't know. I mean, you look out and you see on YouTube, you see these videos of deer trying to mount a girl, and you think, well, what the hell is that about? Well, it's something about her scent that says, I want you. And they're all too happy to oblige her. So
does that work the other way? Do females ever go after men?
In our species, there's no telling what a female is going to do. And that's why they're the most dangerous creatures, I think, on the face of the planet.
Now we're going to get hate mail. Thanks.
It's just a joke, ladies. I don't know that I've ever heard tell of that. I've never seen that personally, but I know that there are females that will be a little less. There's kind of a weird thing, at least with deer, that I've seen, which is that the male comes out and he's ready to go, and the female's kind of standing there, and it's like you're going to work to get this, if you know what I'm saying. And she'll kind of take off from him, and she'll run away from him, and all of that. And then after a while, she'll just submit, and that's it. So I don't know that I've ever seen a female go after a male. That's not something I've come across. I do know that on a number of other levels that dumb animals is kind of like the thing that you hear from some people. Well, it's a dumb animal. It doesn't know anything. I worked on a milking farm, and you talk about the dumb cows. They don't know what's up. They don't know what's going on. That is the most asinine statement that you could possibly make about any animal for my money. The notion of human traits. I mean, we can always try to attribute these human qualities to any animal, but until you actually sit and watch these things, and you see how they act, you see the behavior of them, and you see how smart they are, and you see how they actually play with you. You make some effort, some vain effort to camouflage your scent and to camouflage your silhouette on the horizon, and you camo you think they don't know you're there. They know you're there. I think it's seldom that they can't figure out what's going on. I think they all know the story. And I don't think one can underestimate the will that they have to live, just like we have this burning will to live. And there was a story in northern Baltimore County, not a horrible amount of years ago, although it's probably been, I don't know, at least 20 years, where in the woods had been sighted a two-headed deer. And before anybody says, well, what does that mean? It's not like a hydra deer, or anything so grand as that. It was, you've all seen rams headbutt each other. You've all seen deer probably fight each other over a female deer with the antlers. They slam each other and that sort of thing. Well, apparently two deer had gotten into it, and obviously one was significantly bigger than the other. Well, guess who won? The big one. But guess what happened in the process? The lesser endowed deer with antlers got his neck broke. It's the only thing I can figure out. Or this other one rammed him with such force that it broke his neck, or something, and they became entangled and could not get away from each other. So you've got one deer who's quite large, the other one who's smaller than him, obviously, and is dead. And so now what does he do? Well, the only thing he can do, which is to gore with his feet, and it's the only way I can figure that he could do it, is to gore the other one's head off and then walk around for the rest of his life with this other deer's head upside down on his antlers. And that's exactly what they were seeing, was what they called the two-headed deer. And I'm assuming by the time they saw it, the other deer's skull was probably, head was probably a skull with antlers upside down on top the other deer's head. I mean, that to me, well, I never saw it myself, but I heard people talking about it. That to me in itself is such a clear evidence of the thing's will to live. That it's that should be inspiring to people, that something could come across that kind of a situation in the wild and still stay alive. And think about going camping with no supplies. Think about that survivalist instinct, and then think about how tough it must be on these animals. And I realize they don't know anything but that, but it's freaking tough out in the wilderness, even for these animals. So people don't talk to me about dumb animals. I don't believe in such things. So.
It's hard out here for a chimp.
Right.
Huh?
Right.
A little Weird Al for you? That's what I'm good for you.
The monkeys know. I'm telling you, the monkeys know. 15
minutes of Jeff saying something smart and then me coming in with a parody of a song. You're welcome.
Yeah.
So there you are. While you were talking, I looked up girl humped by deer or whatever, and there is a fantastic long video of this blonde girl. This deer, yeah, I mean, it's chasing her around and trying to mount her. It's pretty insane. And there is clearly a woman on camera and another woman running with her, and the deer is not interested in them. So,
right.
There you go.
It could be anything. It could be perfume. It could be the cycle. It could be.
Well,
it could be any number of things.
He's not sniffing around her nether region.
No,
he starts
just
sniffing around
her
neck, and then he tries to mount her.
Yes,
and then it's on.
Yes, I mean, yeah. It's and clearly, I mean, this is an animal that should be, by all rights, should be afraid of a bipedal human. They know we shoot at them, and at some point in its life, it's had to have encountered that kind of thing.
Do you think that? What do you? Here's the thing. I guess we can't know. Were animals afraid of us before we had guns?
Oh, that's a that's a tough one. I remember, and I'm sure Allie will, Alice. I'm sure Alice would have gone to the Grand Canyon at some point, living where she does. When I went there years ago, you had deer walking right up to you in the place because, number one, they're around people a lot, and number two, you can't hunt them there. And it is amazing when it's off season, how they seem to know. They seem to know just by the temperature in the air. Oh, they're not going to shoot at me, so it's okay. Which makes life all too easy for poachers who illegally hunt these animals. But I would have to say, I don't know, but it's an interesting picture to have of a lot of animals not being afraid of you because they know that you're not going to hurt them. I would think it'd be a lot different world if we didn't hunt animals in the way that they behave with us. And then, you think we're talking about North America. You talk about places like Africa with an elephant or a rhinoceros or something like that. I mean, clearly a rhino doesn't give a shit who you are. Oh, you think you're going to do something to me? Do you? I'll ram that Jeep up your ass. That's what a rhino probably says. And so I don't think they have any fear of you to run away or that sort of thing. Whereas a gorilla, that is my favorite animal of all time. The wife and the baby will go up a tree to get away from you, but the man, he's going to stand and punch your face in. They are very much like us in behavior, but
like you and Lobo.
Right. Yeah. Like Villalobos. Okay. But yeah, I would think it would be a lot different relationship if they weren't hunted. But that's not to say that I don't understand the need for, it's that's a whole nother argument of, do we need to hunt woodland animals in the United States to keep their population down? Well, my answer is if we weren't building over top of their homes, and the places where they are, then we wouldn't have to decrease their numbers so that they have enough to eat. It's kind of like there's a back and forth there. I don't think it's something we can know, but I can tell you they definitely know when it's off season. I've definitely got a lot closer to them when it's not cold, when it's warm, and they are just kind of milling around getting a drink or something. I've never had a problem walking up on them pretty close in an environment such as that.
Well, it's interesting now that we're talking about this. In Maine, they have moose, and there's no moose season. Right. So the moose will just stand in the road, and it's often been said that they understand that there's no moose season, and that's why. Because I guess there used to be a moose season, and so now they don't give a shit. Now they're just like, whatever, you're not going to kill me. So maybe that's indicative, and maybe if the animal is bigger than you and aggressive, then it's going to charge. If not, it's going to be nonchalant about it.
Right.
But if I'm wrong, and if it's not about guns or hunting season, then what is it that they're picking up on? What difference is it in a human that they're picking up on that makes us unnatural to their kingdom? And is there a lesson there in terms of quote unquote aliens or any paranormal phenomena that frightens us?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Good question. As far as the moose go, excuse me, 3, 2, 1. I mean, as far as moose go, there's one there that'll absolutely destroy you. So maybe there's kind of that thing. It's kind of like, I mean, bear too, the same way. A bear really doesn't have any natural predators per se that can deal with him. And a bear, it to me is the most fearsome animal that we have in the United States, because there is no place that you can go should you piss one off. I mean, you're not running through the water. You're not going up a tree. You're not running up a hill or going on flat land running away from them. They will eat you. That's it.
Play dead.
Yeah, play dead. You might just lose an arm. Yeah, I mean, there's that. You've got that whole thing. But I think a lot of these animals realize that they are the top of the food chain. And even when it comes to humans, it's like, what are you going to do? I'm in the road. What are you going to do? You going to get out and shoo me away? Go ahead. You see these things on my head? You know what I can do to you with those? I'll bat you around like a ping pong ball. Yeah, I think they know. I think that is something that they just come to realize when nothing bothers them. And I've always wondered what it would be like to catch an animal, or, whether it be a moose or a deer or an elk or something like that, and put a camera on top of its head somehow so that it doesn't hurt it, attach it to its antlers. And then would it be great to be able to see, like, what does he do all day? Like, where does he go? What does he do? How does he behave? We can observe them in the wild, but at that point, I think they know you're observing them. So what does that do to their behavior? What if you could be the moose and put the camera on their antlers somehow and witness what he is looking at, witness what he watches and sees? And does he see other animals being attacked by other animals and realizing, well, I'm bigger than that. Why would that bother me? That squirrel isn't going to hurt me, although he seems to be giving that chipmunk a run for his money. What's he going to do to me? Do they witness those kind of things? Do they see how it all works and go, okay, I'm on the top of the food chain here. I got nothing to worry about. And so therefore a person is obviously smaller than they are. And do they realize that? Do they know how big they are? One would assume that they do.
Jeff Ritzman.
Yeah.
Are you willing to talk about what happened 2 nights ago?
Sure. Yeah.
You like that abrupt segue?
Wild stuff, man. Wild stuff.
Yeah, we started off the show saying, nothing's happened to us. But I think you had a pretty spectacular, if short-lived...
short-lived, for sure.
Experiment/experience. So
yeah,
have at it, friend.
Well, I think everybody knows who listens to this show on any regular basis at all knows that I can't meditate because my head won't stop talking. And so I downloaded this thing for the Droid called Buddhist meditation. I had no idea what it was, so I just saw it was a meditation tool, and I thought, well, I can definitely use something. And it's a great program because it kind of leads you through things in steps and in varying lengths of meditation. So the first one might only be 5 minutes, and then it elongates after that. And it starts you off with a question or a focus for what you're going to meditate on. And I think the gist of what I came on to seeing when I booted it up the other night was happiness is one of the things that you can give so much away and never be short on, or something like that. Like it never depletes, that sort of thing. And so you press a button and you start, and it literally has a bar that creeps across as you're meditating. It's kind of like a timer. And you hear a ding, like a small chime, that ding, and then it reverberates for about, 15, 20 seconds, and then it ding again. So you've always got this chime going the whole time that you're doing this. And so I shut my eyes. I was sitting in the fart chair. The lovely wife was cooking dinner. The TV was on. The dog was sleeping in the corner. Everything was fine.
What was the sun doing?
I think he was at rehearsal. He has a gig this weekend, so he was out at a special midweek rehearsal for his band. So,
And Shroud Man.
Yeah, who the fuck knows where he is?
What about the light on the ceiling? We need to know all the characters in Just Wright.
I don't know where they are. They kind of show up when they want to. Although, remind me something about that, because Lee reminded me something of that today. So, anyway, I'm sitting in the chair, and I shut my eyes, and I kind of focused on the 3D blackness behind the eyelids, and as I told Jer last night, I can't say how this came into how I came into seeing this, because I don't remember. It just all of a sudden was there, but I don't remember when that started. All of a sudden I just found myself sitting in front of a man. Obviously we're sitting on the floor or something. He looks to be Asian, but he's dark skinned. He's bald. He's wearing a white garment of some kind that seems appropriate for his look. And it's got some gold on it. And he's got a bowl in his hands. And he's swishing this bowl in like a counterclockwise way. It's a white bowl. It has some trim on the inside that it's either like a blue or a grayish color, but it's a white bowl. And it wasn't like this bowl had a lip that kind of, concaved over the edge of it. It was kind of just like a half sphere, but a little bit flared. And inside of this bowl were these red gems about the size of a $50, large in size. And he's swishing them in this bowl. You could hear them kind of, rubbing against the bowl itself, making that sound of, go put a fork in a bowl and swish it. You'll hear what I mean. It's that same kind of sound. And instinctively, I knew I was supposed to take this bowl from him and keep them going in this kind of undulation, keep that going. So I put my hands underneath of his, and it was almost like the bowl was doing it. It wasn't like I had to move the bowl in this way. It's like the bowl was moving itself. And so my hands immediately were following his hands, and then he withdrew his hands, and there I am with the bowl. And it's going around and around. And my eyes started to open. I see the TV. I hear the TV. I've heard everything going on around me the whole time this is going on. Now keep in mind, seeing the guy taking the bowl, all of that, 5 to 7 seconds at the most. It was very quick. And my eyes open up, and I have this strange feeling. And it's from my shoulders down my arms. My arms were to my side. And when I open my eyes, my hands are palmed into each other. I mean, I'm holding the bowl. Like I'm holding the bowl, but the bowl isn't there. And it's moving in this, like I'm undulating the bowl. It's like the same motion that I'm doing in this visionary thing, I'm actually doing. And I remember looking down and going, I'm not doing that. And then it really, like the surprise of it, I guess, hit me. And Lee really put that into the great verbiage of, it surprised me to see this. And it shocked me in a way that I'm moving and I've got my hands in such a way that we're down beside me, and all of a sudden they're cupped in front of me and they're going in this circle, and I'm not doing it. So it was kind of like my head said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And when that happened, I kind of shook out of it. And that's it. That's the end. And so I think I get a little bit at least, or at least I got a bit slice of what Jeremy talks about when he says, I'm moving like this, but I'm not doing it. Because I never quite understood. How can you not know you're doing that? Like, you're moving. How can you not be the one doing it? Well, I get it. Because, I mean, I know how I sat in the chair and I put my arms down beside me, not on the armrest, but down beside my legs. And all of a sudden now they're cupped in front of me and they're making this motion. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. It's shocking. I mean, it didn't scare me. At no point was I afraid. I mean, at no point.
One thing I forgot to ask you the other night, or just I didn't forget, I just didn't even dawn on me at all. Did his facial expression change at all? Like when you took the bowl?
I didn't, like I told Leah, I didn't even really look at his face that much to, no, I got no sense of that. No. In fact, I wasn't even looking at him. I was looking at the bowl. I was looking at this thing, these gems swishing around inside this bowl.
Did any of it give you an emotion or a feeling?
I'd be just very calm. Like,
but not like I'm learning something, or hey, I've got the hang of this, or anything even like that.
I remember feeling like, yeah, I'm doing this. Like, oh, I got it, like that. But I mean, got what? Swishing a bunch of gems around in a bowl. I mean, like, what did I get? Like, I mean, on some level, when I had the bowl, and I remember thinking, oh wow, they're doing it itself, but I've got it. I've got it. It's not falling out of my fingers. Because I got the sense that if I stopped, when I was in the visionary part of this, I got the sense that if I stopped moving my hands, it would go on without me and be in the floor, that kind of thing. And I just thought, oh, I'm doing it. It's kind of like, I'm riding the bike. I got it.
See, I wonder with any of these either meditative or even ayahuasca brew, shroom trippy, whatever type learning experiences, is it always something that to our mind seems nonsensical when you think about it, or has anyone ever learned anything practical?
Yeah, you got me hanging. That's.
I mean, the DMT tykes go, hey, I want to show you this. You got to learn this, and then it's something like even singing in colors, let's say, or
right.
Something like that is useless, or not even like not purposeful in any way that we can understand it to be purposeful. What is the effect of doing something like that? It may be cool to learn in that realm for the sake of singing colors or whatever, but
right.
But what is it actually doing? Are you just learning a hobby? Swish these stones, boy.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, as far as that goes for me, I don't have any. This is not my field of any kind of knowledge at all. So I don't know what that was, but all I can say is from my perspective, it was really interesting and a little surprising to see myself moving and doing things. And I have no realization that I'm doing it at all. None at all, until I open my eyes and I see movement and I feel myself doing it. And I look down and there it's going. And I'm like, what? I'm not doing that. And it wasn't stopping. It wasn't like, oh, I should stop doing that. It wasn't like that. It was like, I'm not doing that. And finally, it kind of like something snapped and the connection was broken. And I jerked a little bit like, whoa, huh. But it wasn't like it scared me. Now, if you talk to Terrence about the DMT tykes and what he learned from that, I think he would tell you these are suggestions of things. It is showing you something that is an idea. It's a manifestation of the full realization of an idea. And so I think what he used to say was, it's about communication. It's about, we need to find another way to communicate besides words, because words don't work. And it was about the suggestions of, what does telepathy mean? What is the definition of that? Because everybody has a much different definition than I've heard him describe. And so what does that mean? And can we explore that? Is there a way to explore that in this space that you feel the full realization of that in the DMT space?
How many of the gems were there?
Isn't it weird how I can picture this so perfect in my head? I would say 8 to 10, maybe, of them in the bowl.
So there's
more than a few. Yeah.
There's got to be some sort of lore about 8 or 10 gems in a bowl from Asia, right?
I mean, I looked around on the net today just a little bit, about meditation, gems, bowl, this sort of thing. I didn't really find anything that matched up with that. I don't know what that was. But I'm really curious, like, I mean, the more I thought about it today, it seemed oddly similar to, you remember the binaural beats, Jerry? You remember that we both heard strange things, this strange Nine Inch Nail-ish piano music, people talking, what sounds like a party in the room beside you or something like that when you're doing these binaural, but yet there's nothing there that's doing that. It's just the binaural beats do this and apparently put you in some kind of different headspace that you perceive either things in your mind that are there. Although why would everyone hear piano music that sounds like it belongs in a creepy movie? And then other times you listen to it and sometimes it's very pretty sounding. It's just distant and lulling. But I mean, what is that? This had almost that same feeling, like this is stuff that's right there and you're too consumed with daily life to actually do this. Like, you must do this. So you sit down, you close your eyes, you hear the bell, you ask yourself the question over and over and over and over. You know, I mean, it reminds me of what Crowley talked about. Sit on the floor and meditate on why you're sitting on the floor and meditating. And I kind of feel like in really short order, I had shut my eyes and within a couple of minutes, there's the bowl, you know, it's like, yeah, check it out. I mean, I get the feeling that these kind of experiences are not so far away and not so hard to reach if you just do it. And, but I guess I've been trying all day to figure out what was different about that night as opposed to any other night that I've tried anything like this and can't sit still long enough to make it do anything. The only thing I can figure out is dinner was cooking. I had the time. I sat in the chair. I had slept late that day. I felt great. I was awake. I was alert, felt sharp. Yeah, let's just go ahead and check this thing out because I've had it on my phone now for weeks and never tried it. Let me check this thing out. And I just did it. So is all of this stuff so easy to reach, you know? And if it is, then what else is there that you can experience through that stuff? I mean, it's really interesting to me that this could be, that it's so vivid, I guess. Is I've heard people talk about things that they've seen before, visionary things they've seen in meditative states before. I've heard you talk about this sort of thing, but man, it's so real. It's not dreamlike at all. I mean, not at all. It's very present, I guess is the way to put it. I don't know. It just makes me wonder now, like when I do it again, what's the next thing? Like, what is that? Am I going to learn what that is?
I just sent you a link to the Buddha singing bowl.
Singing bowl.
Is this your bowl?
Oh, hey, it's shaped like that. That's the shape. See how it kind of curves like there's no lip on it? Yeah. That's kind of that's pretty much the shape. Yeah. Which is not a unique shape. It's like a mixing bowl, but yeah, but that is the shape without a doubt. Yeah. Huh.
Once again, Jeff Ritzman associated with some sort of Buddhist gong bell thing because that's what this singing bowl is associated with.
It's a gong, huh? Well, used by psychotherapists, massage therapists, cancer specialists, stress and meditation specialists. That's definitely the shape. That's definitely the shape. In fact, more along the lines of the second picture down on the right there, Jer, on the red background. Probably about the size of the one that is you have a big one, then you have a next one down. I'm probably like in that the one that's on the right hand side on the bottom end, about like that. You know, like that kind of half shape, but just a slight flare to it. But that's
people are wondering. This is the antique singing bowls from a Himalayan bowl collection on Wikipedia. So if you go to wiki.org and singing bowl is going to bring you to what we're looking at.
Except this was white, and these are clearly metal bowls. But yeah, that's it. So I mean, not so different from any other friggin' bowl, but it's interesting that there's something like that.
What was the thing playing on the iTunes app?
That almost sounded to me like remember back in well, can I here? I can actually play that because I have it. Now here's the here's what it says as far as what you're supposed to think about. Do not dwell on the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. Okay, so that's what you're supposed to think about as you're doing this. And this is what it sounds like. And that's it. That's what you hear for minutes on end. And I gotta say, when the bowl and all of that was going on, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear it. So I have no clue why I didn't hear it. But when I came out of it, of course, I had my headphones on and all that. But when I came out of it and I jumped and I shook my hands, then clearly it was still doing it. But that's the sound. So it's like a little chime type thing. And I'm not sure what that is, what that instrument is.
Well, Jeff, that would be a singing bowl.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can just go to YouTube. There are all these different types of singing bowls, and you can just listen to them and try to find the right one.
I thought it was one of those little, you remember that, like when you were in elementary school, remember they had those finger symbols? Stupid little things. I thought that's what it was, like somebody holding one of them with their finger and like tapping it with a mallet or something. That's what it sounded like to me. That's a singing bowl, huh?
Very interesting. And so it brought you to a man with a singing bowl, huh? How did he appear in your mind's eye? Now I know we've already talked about this, and so I kind of know the answers to all of this, but we should probably be fair to the audience and let them in on them. I know you didn't see a background, right, with this guy.
No.
Was it white or was it black, just like the 3D black in your mind's eye?
I want to say it was light. It wasn't blackness. It was like I was in a room of some sort. But I don't remember. I was so focused on first him and the bowl, and then so focused on the bowl that it didn't really. I have to say, it didn't register as to what the surroundings were like. That's the only way I can describe.
And how did he pop into your head?
He didn't. It was kind of like there wasn't like a start point. It was kind of like I shut my eyes and I'm focusing on this blackness and I'm hearing this bing, bing. I'm hearing that. Meanwhile, I'm also hearing kind of the muted TV and the wife cooking and all of that. And it was almost like you wake up. It's like you wake up into that. It was kind of like all of a sudden I just realized, oh, wait a minute. Well, okay, now I'm here. But again, unlike most weird things like this, it didn't bother me. It didn't disturb me in any way because it was over so quickly. There wasn't time to really assess what was going on. I just saw this guy. Oh yeah, swishing the bowl. And that became my sole focus, is trying to take this bowl from him and keep him going. And then realizing they don't need to keep going. I need to keep moving. So it was almost like I woke up into that place, wherever that place was or wherever he was. I kind of, oh, here I am. There was no, it was just kind of like I kind of drearily lazed into that experience. It wasn't like a bam, here it is, and now you're in this space. It wasn't like that. It was just kind of a gradual awareness of being there. Does that make sense? There just wasn't any start to that.
Yeah.
It was just, it ebbed right in. It just flowed right in, like very gently. Now you're in the floor with this guy.
But you didn't have anything else in that space. I mean, it was complete pitch blackness.
Yeah, that was it.
No colors, no
No.
star-like things or anything like that?
No, I didn't see anything like that. It was just I'm staring into the void, and all of a sudden, here's this guy in the bowl, and there was no time to go, what is this? What is this? What is it? Look around and assess what was. There was no time for that. It was just like I was fixated on, look at that. Okay, I'll take it. Okay, I'm opening my eyes and. I'm not doing that. It was,
did it seem longer than it was? Was there a discrepancy between internal time and hearing the TV?
Yeah. It seemed like something was clearly a little detached feeling, but it was like I was behind myself or something like that. It's kind of like I knew where I was the entire time. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going. What is this?
So when you broke off contact, was there any reaction on his part, or was it just over?
It was just over.
So do you feel that it was more of a transmission than a person inside of you, let's say?
Yeah.
Or just like you'd said the other night, like it's like you shut your eyes and someone else opens their inner eye, and there they are.
That's exactly what it felt like. And I was doing this, and I felt like once I had the bowl and it was going and I'm going with it, like that was it, and then, I remember this vividly, that all of a sudden my eyes just began to open. I saw the TV and I was like, well, that wasn't interesting. What is that? And then the whole thing with my hands moving and I'm not doing it, and I'm like, what is this? I've just never. And it wasn't stopping. Everybody has run in their dreams and woke up with their feet moving. Everybody has, every guy, I'm sure, has had some kind of erotic dream and woke up humping his pillow. This was not like that. It just kept going. And had I stayed in kind of that headspace and not but not been so surprised, it would have kept going. I just got that feeling because it was like razor edge focus on this motion, and this motion I just became this motion of doing this. And had I stayed in that space, it would have kept going, and I would have just sat there and looked at it, like watching my hands do this. Not like I'm doing this, but watching my hands do this. I can't explain that any better than that. It's just like, it's a very, very weird thing to open your eyes and see your body doing something that you're not doing. And it's not you, and you're not moving your hands, but yet there they are, and they're moving, and they're cupped, and they're in this very precise positioning, and they're making this movement, and you're not doing it. I can't convey how fucking weird that is. But
just wait till you have a persona that doesn't feel like you doing it. Then that's where the fun really begins. I wouldn't be opposed to that happening again, and trying to keep my head together, to not be like Terrence said, don't give in to astonishment. Well, I did. And when I did, that's when I lost it. And so when I gave into the surprise of it, like, oh my God, I'm not doing that. What is, like, I can't even describe what my head was saying. It was like, oh my, holy shit. It was such shock. Well, if that was an actual human being from this planet, or some, Shambhala, or some sort of mystical, world of myth and lore, let's say,
right.
Then, well, let's just say it's a real person. Let's say that's a real person in another country or something who came in there. Then he's doing something that he understands, and he's trying to show you. So that means that there are people that understand the DMT type things and all of that. There are people who are working on that level, and it's old hat for them. Wouldn't that be interesting to find those people?
Yeah. I don't know what that could have been doing. I don't know what that, like, I don't know that I feel any grand purpose in it, but I'm sure there is something in it that was doing something. But it didn't have that same feeling as, I've talked about my funny little cactus friend from the mushroom thing. Now that felt like it was doing something to me. Now, whether that was a product of, psilocybin or not, that felt like there was a purpose for it being there, and it was doing something to me. It was opening something in me, which I don't know what, but this didn't have that feeling. This felt more like I'm just supposed to swish this bowl. Like, that's what you're supposed to do right there. Just keep doing that. And maybe then something would have happened if I'd have done it long enough. I don't know. But, I mean, my question to people listening is, have you ever heard of something like this? Like, ever heard of somebody giving such a mundane task to someone else? Because when I was thinking about it today, I was like, what if this is just one of those mundane tasks that you do until it breaks you? Like drumming, like, any of these other things that people use to reach some altered state. Is that what that is about? Like, it's a fairly mundane task to move these gems around this bowl and to hear this sound of zh, zh, zh.
Jeff.
What?
I hate to break it to you, but I think you were already in the altered state.
Well, yeah, I know that, but
right.
But is there more? There's more past that. Like, is that what I'm supposed to? Like, should I be going out and getting a mixing bowl, and putting a bunch of little pebbles in it and just doing that? What would that do? How long would you have to
get
do
a
that
singing
before?
bowl? I mean, definitely.
Yeah.
Bowl.
Why not? I mean, I don't know. Like, is that something I'm supposed to do? I don't know. Maybe I'll try it. Although I can tell you, I ain't got rubies like this because these babies were sizable. But I don't know. I mean, they definitely made an interesting sound. It wasn't anything akin to a gong. It was more like a scraping sound, but it had an undulating tone to it. It had a sound to it, and that was all I was fixated on. So I don't know. Is that one of those things? Like I said, like drumming, like any of these other things that you do for so long that you, as Graham Hancock would say, you literally go out of your mind. I don't know.
Very good. Well, once again, we end an episode on I don't know. But
right.
We did travel from deer humping to pillow humping. So
that's right.
That I appreciate.
The old pillow hump. Yes.
Let's call it a night, and we'll see people on Sunday. And hey, we'll talk to Tiokasin on Friday. Maybe we'll record something with him, and maybe we'll have something to report about that on the live show.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be great.
Our thanks to Steve for joining us. And by the way, one last tidbit on Steve. Turns out he's a musician, because I asked him, of all the listeners we've had on this or the live show, why are you not nervous? Because he just wasn't at all. And he said, I'm used to performing. I'm a musician.
Ah, okay. Cool.
So once again, the arts strike the paranormal.
Yeah. And I did want to mention, you had asked me on the live show, I believe this past week, and we had talked about it the week before, about Auburn and Lee coming over to my place that night and us all sitting around talking about paranormal stuff. Lee reminded me of something that I had forgotten about, and really he hadn't told me the depth of it. And I had to listen to the live show actually to remember, did I mention this or not? Lee had Lee does engineering work in the way of audio stuff. And so he's got a lot of very interesting little toys and tools. And he had brought over an EMF detector, really pretty high caliber one. And he said, normally, if he senses a spike in an EMF at any given location that he might do work at, it's around 400 is the number that it reads. And he goes, that's a pretty big spike. As we were sitting there talking, I don't remember exactly what we were talking about at the time, so sorry about that, but I don't. It went off. I mean, it literally started to make a noise, like a siren type noise, and he picked it up. And at first he thought maybe it wasn't calibrated correctly, or maybe something just went off, and then it did it again. And he told me today that he said normally when he gets some sort of aberration, it's around 400 or up to 400. Where he was sitting was, by the way, very close to where we see the light on the ceiling. The reading was 4,000 on his instrumentation. And he says, I looked at that thing after we left. I went over it. There was no good reason for it to spike like that. That is an absurd spike. And he felt that significant enough to want to make mention to me to make sure to tell everybody that. So there's that.
Have you, I know you put the photo of what might be the light by your ceiling fan online. Any more word on that? I mean, are you convinced that that's not a reflection of some sort?
I'm convinced it's not a reflection. Yeah, because I can't tell you how many test shots of. I
mean, the thing that's disconcerting about that is the fact that the fan is going, and so you know, can it be some sort of motion blur off of a tiny reflection or something?
Rotor, yeah. Well, that's exactly what I had thought was, am I catching some kind of reflection at just the right moment that the fan blade is at the right proximity from my camera that it's picking up some kind of flash off of that. And in fact, when you go into the specific channels, you can see where the fan blade edges are, and this is beyond it. And so I can't regulate and say that is a reflection from the fan blades.
Is it floating below it? Is that what you're saying?
It is it's to the fan blades. It's too far left to be the fan blades.
Is it touching the ceiling?
No.
So it's not hanging in the air.
Yes, it appears to be hanging in the air. Yeah. And as usual, there's no reflected light on the ceiling from it. I've never seen, to my recollection right now, I've never seen reflected light from this thing anywhere in the room. It's in that one localized spot, which is kind of as everybody, if you can remember back to Ted Phillips talking about the Marley lights, and I asked if there was reflected light from these things, and he said, interestingly enough, no. That's pretty much how this works. And so immediately, as a guy who does visuals for a living, that's something that immediately I notice. And it's instantly what gives it kind of an eerie quality to that light, is that it's a light and it's a source of light and you can clearly see it, but yet there's no effect on the environment as far as reflected light in any form. And when you're visually minded as I am, that instantly makes it look very strange because you expect to see that sort of effect on the surroundings. And when you don't, your mind immediately kind of short circuits in a way and says, this can't possibly be right.
Well, when I saw it, I mean, the thing that was weird was, well, the fact that it was there, but it was flame-like, it was wavy, but yes. I don't remember it casting any sort of fire shadows, like a campfire or something.
No, yeah. Yeah, it's got a flickery kind of quality to it, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. My God, if you'd have been here the night that I was berating my son for finances and all of that, you'd have really freaked out because it was, like I said, the size of a leg's pantyhose egg. I mean, that's large, very, very large for this thing. Usually it's I don't know, again, about the size of a silver dollar or something around that size, or a little bit bigger maybe. But this thing was just a very, very large thing and flickering at a very quick pulse and then gone just as quick as it was flashing. It just stopped. So I don't know. I mean, clearly to me at this point, the one thing I can tell you about it is it seems to react to emotion. That seems to be pretty clear because when I was standing there, I was standing in the kitchen doorway waiting to shoot a shot of, I think I may mention that Lisa was putting some books up into the cubby in our bedroom and her foot went through a piece of wood and summarily went through the kitchen ceiling. And so I'm there trying to get a picture of this so I can show it to somebody and get a price on fixing it. And I kept getting a blurry shot. And I'm like, why is this thing blurring? I was already pissed off about the hole in the ceiling, but now I'm pissed off that I can't even get a decent picture of it. And I think I had a shitty day at work at the same time. And so I turned around like, what the fuck? And I just turned around and snapped into the other room just to see, does it make a difference? And that's when it showed up in this picture. So I don't know. It certainly seems to respond to emotion. And
do you think it's an extension of your emotion, or do you think it's responding to it?
I haven't a clue. But
you think it has its own autonomy?
I don't know. All I can say is that at times of high emotion, whether it be watching, I mean, it could be something as mundane as watching a movie and being really into the movie, and you have that excitement of watching an action scene. That's when it can happen. And arguments and aggravation and sort of, any kind of strong emotion, that seems to be when you see it. And I don't know. I have no good answer for why that is. Other than, is it, like you said, is it an extension of that? Is it responding to that? Is it, is it using that? I don't know. I haven't a clue. I don't even know what it is, but I'm going to definitely try and take more pictures of just sporadically like that.
Yeah, well, go stub your toe and then point the camera.
Yeah, just do something. Maybe I get involved in some kind of debate with my wife or something. And just randomly snap about the room and see if anything happens. So I don't know, but as far as that shot goes, I got no good answer for it. So that doesn't mean there isn't one, as usual. With any kind of visual evidence, it doesn't mean there isn't an answer to it, but as of right now, it's I don't know what it could be.
Okay.
So there you are.
Well, there we shall leave it. Once again, a bloated episode of goodness and merriment.
Right.
And
learning.
Did we learn anything?
I don't know.
Yeah, we learned that we say I don't know more than we actually know. But I think we already knew that. I think that's the one thing we've known about this show is that we don't know.
I have no idea.
Right.
I have no idea.
Okay, great.
Okay, great.
Well, everyone, sweet dreams, and we will see you Sunday for the live show. And next week, hopefully, we'll have some answers to the riddle of the immediate future of this show as pertains to Teokusin Ghost Horse.
Right. Have a good week. Have a good
weekend.
weekend.
Them. Who are you talking to?
I'm just talking.
Good night.